On most of my Chris-Chan videos, I see comments where people are accusing me of making fun of Chris or advocating for people to make fun of Chris in some sort of way. I don't really understand why people would think such a thing whenever I've said multiple times in comments that contacting Chris isn't a good idea. Yes, seeing him squirm and get angry and at the internet is entertaining, but you should never actually go out of your way to contact him or bully him. Hell, there's even people that believe that Chris deserves to have bad things happen to him just because he's Chris, which is honestly disgusting. Anybody who goes after Chris and attempts to bully him or harass him for the sake of making themselves feel better would be considered an A-log. But then we're left with the question, what is an A-log? Well, it's simple. According to the Quickie, A-logging is a term used to describe one expressing disproportionate levels of hatred for Chris, or let alone anybody on the internet, often including wishing him physical harm, usually for perceived crimes that Chris is guilty of. An A-log statement would be something like the following: what Saddam did in the Gulf War was small potatoes to what Chris has done. When a more fair comparison would be, what Chris has done is small potatoes to what Saddam did in the Gulf War. One of the reasons you shouldn't A-log Chris is because, as the Quickie says, he's not Hitler. Chris has done a lot of really strange things. He's harassed women, he's fallen for trolling attempts, he's stuffed a medallion up his asshole, he sits around in women's clothing and plays video games. He's relatively harmless these days. I mean, the guy has a mental disorder, and as funny as he may be, attacking someone who has a disability to such an extent is really just pathetic and makes you look like an asshole. It may just make you a target if someone feels that you're going a little too far and they could poke you with a stick for some fun. Another thing is that there's actually no legal defense over attacking Chris for real. People that suggest that he should be stalked or sending him threats or assaulting him or any other crazy kind of shit that would actually harm him are pathetic. Doing that kind of shit would only legitimize Chris's victim complex, and likewise get you in a lot of trouble. You would be the villain, and you would likely become a target. Imagine becoming somebody's plaything on the internet just because you harass some guy who has a mental disability. Be kind of embarrassing on your part. Moving forward, Chris is just ignorant, but he's not some sort of supremacist. A lot of people will use Chris's race as a way to justify attacking him, because he used the N-word at one point, or because he called Michael Snyder a Jew. At no point does Chris ever say that whites are better than any other race. At no point does he ever suggest that any group of people is superior to anybody else, unless you want to talk about his views about autism and Asperger's. He was very anti-gay in his younger years, but as he went through the whole Tom girl and eventually the trans stuff, he became less hateful towards those people. In fact, he claims to be homosexual or bisexual himself. I can't really make heads or tails of it because it changes as the wind blows. Most of his previous prejudices or racism or whatever term you want to use was stemming from his parents, his parental upbringing. After his dad died and how his mom is clearly getting close to her demise, he's become a bit more accepting. He's moved onward and he's becoming more of what he could truly be. He's becoming more of himself, and he's starting to become more accepting of people. And let's not forget, Chris ultimately is just an idiot. He's done a lot of stupid things, he's said a lot of stupid things, all around he doesn't seem to be that intelligent. He's made every wrong decision he possibly could, and really that could just be ruled down to him just being absent-minded. He's just stupid. And attacking somebody just because they're an idiot, beyond just pointing your finger and laughing, but actually going out of your way to harass them just because they're that stupid, seems pretty pathetic. They make enough bad decisions in their life. Their life sucks enough. You don't have to help with that. And lastly, most people can avoid being trolled. We all have a few traits that are very similar to Chris's, and while that may be concerning, Chris, at the end of the day, is only human. Even with his disabilities, even with his flaws, he's still a person, whether you like it or not. When you go out of your way just to attack him for just existing, you're making an ass of yourself. And some people attack Chris because they don't want to turn out like him, and let me tell you, A-logging is not the way to do it. Just learn to laugh at yourself, learn to laugh at Chris, or just ignore Chris or ignore your flaws. Just go about your business and enjoy yourself, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. Chris has become immune to people trying to fuck with him in such a way, and doing it now is just gonna make you look like a fucking idiot. It was bad enough years ago, but with Chris's thicker skin, it makes you look like a moron. And that brings us to a close for this video. Sorry it was so short, but I do have stuff in the works, including a proper Chris-Chan video. As always, I've got more stuff coming down the pipeline, but until then, I'll see you degenerates next time.